Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I am delighted and proud to be here with two members of my team who have greatly contributed to the project, Mr. Olivier Vincent, who is the project manager, and Mrs. Nathalie Lessard, who is our communication director. This morning, I will recap on the deconstruction of the original Champlain Bridge, which is a flagship project for our organization that is transforming not only Montreal landscape, but also communities in the greater Montreal region. But before doing that, I would like to introduce the Jacques Cartier and Champlain Bridges Incorporated, or JCCBI, that I have had the privilege of leading for the past 7 years. JCCBI is a Crown corporation that manages a number of key assets in Montreal and Quebec City. The Jacques Cartier Bridge, our most recent acquisition, which is the century-old Quebec Bridge, the federal section of the Honoré Mercier Bridge, the Estacade, the Melogeville Tunnel, the federal section of the Bonaventure Expressway that we are currently transforming into a boulevard. And of course, we used to be in charge of the original Champlain Bridge that obviously no longer exists. Through our proactive asset management approach, we ensure that these critical assets remain safe, functional, and aesthetically pleasing for as long as possible. Our team of 187 employees includes 54 engineers, and we are responsible for a total of 82 million trips per year and about 700,000 trips for active mobility users. Now, let's take a closer look at the deconstruction of the original Champlain Bridge. JCCBI has managed this bridge since 1978. Due to structural problems, for decades we had to deploy innovative reinforcement solutions to keep the bridge fully open to traffic until its last day of operation on June 28, 2019, 57 years after its opening, on the 28th of June. I'm sure you can understand how emotional it was for us to deconstruct this bridge that had been under our care for so long. At the same time, we were eager to tackle the challenge of deconstructing a major 3.4 kilometer, 6-lane traffic bridge without resorting to blasting and while upholding major sustainable development principles. Despite the scale of this historic task, we boldly took on this challenge and aimed to go the extra mile. Because even though we knew the bridge had to be taken down, we wanted to leave the community with many tangible ways to remember this iconic structure. One of the project's most important legacies has been the sustainable development and environmental protection measures that minimized the project's impact and maximized its benefits. In addition to keeping thousands of pieces of the Champlain Bridge from ending up at the bottom of the St. Lawrence River, we ensured that the majority of the 264,000 tons of materials from the bridge would be recycled or reused. The required 7 hectares of compensation projects would be implemented. Best practices in occupational health and safety would be applied. Research projects would help advance infrastructure knowledge. The freed up land would be developed as public space for the Héritage Champlain component, which will be completed this coming December and which is featured on this slide. How could this old project and even more be done under time and on budget. Our success factors were preparation, preparation, and preparation. First, we set up a dedicated project team with members who had experience as contractors. Outsourcing is indeed effective when the project authority also has experience as a contractor. This team was supported by a number of consultants from different disciplines, particularly to develop the execution criteria, evaluate methods, and draft the contract clauses that would be both demanding and realistic to ensure the project was a success. At no point did we simply hand the responsibility for the project over to the contractor, as the deconstruction project was everyone's baby. Our project team put every effort into analyzing the project and preparing the procurement documents and contractual agreements. For example, in the design-build contract, we included requirements for civil engineering work, environmental protection, measures to mitigate and handle complaints, and we also set out clear penalties for non-performance. We also implemented an atypical and robust procurement process that included a qualitative and a financial evaluation. Another example of our bold approach was the innovative recovery and traceability component for thousands of tons of materials, and these requirements were also included in the procurement documents. The contractor was Nouvel Horizon Saint-Laurent, NHSL, a consortium made up of Pomerleau Incorporated and Delsan AIM Environmental Services Incorporated. They deployed deconstruction methods that exceeded our target of recovering 80% of the materials to reach 96% with 100% traceability. During the call for tenders phase, we held extensive discussions with the tenderers and organized 5 workshops to respond to their questions with thoroughness and transparency. Most questions and answers were shared with all tenderers, which allowed us to minimize risks, unknowns, and costs. However, we weren't able to plan for everything. In February 2020, we announced the winning tenderer, and a month later, we were hit with a global pandemic. Quite the unexpected surprise. One of our solutions to this unforeseen cost was to negotiate the fees related to the COVID-19 separately from the design-build contract. The COVID direct fees were billed and paid monthly, so we shared the risk with the contractor. From the start of the contract, our team established a collaborative relationship with the contractor. The JCCBI team was thorough, strict, and prepared during the negotiations, but collaborative during the execution. Finding solutions was everyone's business. We also hired a consultant who had experience as a contractor and who helped manage the work. He served as an excellent intermediary between our team and the contractor. Another success factor was our participatory approach, which began prior to the work. As everyone knows, this type of project can't go ahead without social acceptability. The process began in 2019 with 4 information days plus an online public consultation about the redevelopment project Héritage Champlain, planned after the deconstruction. This approach allowed us to interact with the public to ensure everyone clearly understood the project, to eliminate fears, and to determine what the public generally wanted for the Héritage Champlain component. Throughout the project, we also deployed multiple communication tools, such as a website, hundreds of posts on social media, 24 issues of our Deconstruction newsletter, and 6 public meetings attended by our team and the contractor. We got everybody on board to spread the word about the project and help the public take part in it. Interested people could use all of these tools to stay up to date on the project's progress. Our participatory approach also included an advisory committee and multiple meetings with elected officials, partners, and interest groups. We used this transparency to maintain trust with all of our stakeholders right from the start, and the dialogue continued with all of them right until the end of the project. We took another bold step in this project before the contract was signed, when we allowed the contractor to mobilize on site so that engineering and inspection work could begin, which helped accelerate the start of construction. This phase is crucial to avoid any of the snags that can be frequent and costly at the start of a design-build contract. Basically, a difficult startup can often snowball into a contract that is difficult to manage. Once the work started, JCCBI was strict at engaging in frequent and effective communication with the contractor. Executive meetings were regularly held, in addition to the weekly and even daily meetings that our project team held with the contractor as needed. We also kept an eye on potential risks to keep the project on course. We also quickly resolved any disputes so that we could concentrate on executing the work. Finally, in order to effectively communicate with the public throughout the project, weekly meetings were held between members of our team and the contractor's team, who included engineers and communication specialists. This way, we could fully coordinate the site activities with our communication activities. There were no surprises, either for us or for the public, which is one reason we only received 3 complaints over 41 months of work. This impressive statistic is also thanks to NHSL's exceptional work methods and the extensive mitigation measures planned throughout the work to minimize the impacts on the public. This is just an overview of some of the success factors that went into the deconstruction of the original Champlain Bridge. However, this major project included so much more. Let's watch the whole project unfold from start to finish with this video.
The original Champlain Bridge opened to traffic in 1962 and was replaced with the Samuel de Champlain Bridge in 2019.
Let's look back at the historic deconstruction of this 3.4-kilometer bridge. This unique in Canada project was the largest in JCCBI's history.
The JCCBI team first went through a very thorough process to award the contract. A public consultation was then held on the deconstruction. On June 28, cars from 1962, the year the bridge was inaugurated, were the last vehicles to cross the structure. A few months later, groups of people also got to walk on the bridge.
July saw the start of the deconstruction work on the Isle de Sûre side using a sustainable development approach.
The deconstruction also had to include environmental protections.
The bridge disappeared from the Montreal landscape as the deconstruction made its way to the South Shore. Work on the Brossard side ended with the complete closure of Highway 132. Constant communication kept the public informed on how the work was progressing. Effective mitigation measures limited impacts on residents.
A key operation was the lowering of the main span in a true feat of civil engineering. Keepsake rivets were given out to mark the end of the project. Material reuse reduced the project's environmental footprint. The project finished 2 months ahead of schedule and on budget, despite a global pandemic. JCCBI earned 3 honors for the deconstruction.
The Canada-wide material reuse competition gave a second life to many steel components. Research and development projects are advancing our knowledge of infrastructure. The Heritage Champlain project is a tangible legacy that will benefit the community while commemorating the bridge.
The original Champlain Bridge stood as an iconic landmark of Greater Montreal's landscape for nearly 6 decades. Its complex and delicate deconstruction was done with respect for the environment and the local population. The JCCBI team is very proud of this achievement.
As I said at the start, despite the scale of this historic project, JCCBI took a bold approach to the deconstruction that will leave many legacies for the community. I firmly believe that we carried out this major project with exemplary respect for the environment and the community. I am obviously very proud of these results, especially because the contract was completed 2 months ahead of schedule and within the initial budget of $225 million, plus the direct cost of managing the pandemic, which total $4.9 million. Today, the deconstruction work is complete. The 12 research projects are almost completed, and the results of at least 2 of them will have an impact on the S6 Canadian Highway Bridge Design Code. The redevelopment contract Héritage Champlain will be completed in December 2025, leaving a very concrete legacy for the population. Overall, our 3 keys to success included meticulous preparation, dedicated communications, close collaboration between JCCBI's teams, our consultants, and NHSL, all of whom I would like to thank sincerely for their immense contribution. Of course, no 2 projects are the same, and no 2 have the same constraints and requirements. We are very proud of how well the deconstruction turned out, and we intend to learn as much as possible to apply these lessons to our future projects. So the PowerPoint is finished, but I just want to highlight some of the concrete methods that were put in place for the theme of this conference, decarbonizing the construction industry. So for greenhouse gas emission, but also environmental requests that we made. As owner of the several assets, we have a major role to play in changing practices with our requirements in terms of the decarbonization of the industry and best environmental practices. And it starts in our procurement documents. For the deconstruction of the Champlain Bridge, JCCBI provided the contractor with granular materials from the jetties used in the construction of the new Samuel de Champlain Bridge. Our contractor, NHSL, reused 48% of this material to build temporary jetties, a total of approximately 400,000 tons of materials. This amounts to a huge reduction of trucking and improved the project GHG footprint. And it was not the end of the story, as a lot of these granular materials were used for a third time in the Bonaventure project last year. This required a lot of planning on our part, storage space, equipment, handling, special contract clauses, but we believe it's important to do it, and we did it twice. In our contractual requirements, we also included material reuse. Our threshold was 80% of the total mass. In the end, as mentioned earlier, 96% of the 264,000 tons of materials were recycled or reused, and with 100% traceability. Materials leaving the construction site to be recycled or reused had to be sent to a recipient located within a radius of 150 kilometers from the site. By the way, material traceability has become a standard in Quebec for the construction industry, but we included it in our requirements before it became an obligation. The contractor also had to reserve certain bridge components for us, for a material reuse competition, and for our research projects. In terms of carbon neutrality, we also included specific requirements. GHG emissions had to be estimated by the contractor, quantified during work, and compensated by the contractor. JCCBI also contributed to reduce environmental impacts of these major projects. We developed 7 hectares of compensation projects. One of these projects consists of a development of a piece of farmland into a grassy floodplain for a conservation project in Saint Ignace de Loyola, which will create areas for fish spawning and preserve biodiversity. We also launched a Canadian material reuse competition. In the end, 11 projects from the Canadian population were selected and are being carried out. There was about 50 projects that were submitted. We are currently completing the Héritage Champlain redevelopment project. This adds three new green spaces created along the St. Lawrence River. In the end, the deconstruction work was completed 2 months ahead of schedule. That concludes my presentation. Thank you.